You ever kissed Jay Z romantically?
No. No, I can't answer that. I can't answer that.
Oh, she's touching him up the neck! Look! You see?
Why do people not want to let the Jay Z Blu Cantrell thing?
Blu Cantrell was asked on live television whether she had ever kissed Jay Z romantically. She laughed. She touched her neck. She said she couldn't answer that. And then, not long after that interview aired, she disappeared. Not gradually, not through the natural fading that happens to artists who stop releasing music. She disappeared the way people disappear when someone with enough power decides they need to be gone. Fast, clean, and complete enough that within a few years, most people had forgotten she ever existed. That is the story. And the fact that it has stayed buried for 2 decades, only resurfacing when one of her songs went viral on TikTok and people started asking where she went, is itself part of what makes it so disturbing.
Jay Z worked very hard to erase you and me, just like he did Elle, just like he did his relationship with R. Kelly, just like he did his relationship with Aaliyah. Blu, it's time to talk.
Blu Cantrell, born Tiffany Cobb, did not stumble into the music industry. She fought her way in from nothing. She left Rhode Island for New York City at 17 with no connections and no safety net, figured out fast that she needed a different city, relocated to Atlanta, and got discovered in the kind of chance encounter that sounds like fiction but apparently happened. Someone told her she looked like a singer. She went to a studio. She sang. 2 weeks later, she had a record deal. 5 labels had been fighting over her before she signed with Arista. She had the voice, she had the presence, and she had the hunger of someone who understood exactly how rare her shot was and was not going to waste it.
And someone came up to me and said I looked like a singer, but it really was a pickup line. And I took my mom and my family and we went to the studio and I sang and they signed me. And like 2 weeks later, I had a record deal. I think I always wanted to be a performer since I was very young. It was something that I knew I wanted to do. It was the only thing I ever did, actually.
Her debut album, So Blue, came out in 2001 and went platinum. Hit 'Em Up Style, the song that recently went viral on TikTok with nearly 12 million views, was everywhere. Billboard charts, radio, the song that announced her as someone the industry needed to take seriously. L.A. Reid, who was then one of the most powerful executives in the business, personally called her to tell her she had hit #1. She followed it with her sophomore album, Bittersweet, earned Grammy nominations for both records, and was operating at a level that put her in direct conversation with the biggest female R&B voices of that era. And then she was gone.
Think at the end of the day, a younger, less savvy to the ways of the world broad.
Somebody a little bit more naive.
You said it, not me.
The timeline of her disappearance maps directly onto the timeline of her public association with Jay Z. And the timeline of her public association with Jay Z maps directly onto the timeline of Beyonce's rising discomfort with that association. That is not a coincidence that requires elaborate theorizing to explain. It is a sequence of events that the people involved made visible through their own words, their own music, and their own behavior, and then apparently assumed the public would stop paying attention till once enough time had passed. The public is paying attention again. To understand what Blu Cantrell represented to Beyonce in the early 2000s, you have to understand where both women were at that specific moment.
Well, LA called me himself and told me, he said, Blu, he's like, your song is #1 today. And I was totally ecstatic. He's always the one to call me with the good news. Like when they said I was nominated for a Grammy, he called me. He always calls his artists and really, connects with them and spends time.
Beyonce had just launched her solo career off the back of Destiny's Child's Dissolution, a group exit that generated significant public criticism directed at her and her father Matthew, who managed the group and was widely seen as having prioritized Beyonce's individual advancement at the expense of her bandmates. Her solo footing was not yet fully established. She was building toward dominance but had not yet achieved it. And the man she was with, Jay Z, already a colossus in the industry, had a documented, visible, and apparently unresolved connection to a woman who was releasing chart-topping R&B records in the same lane Beyonce needed to own. Blu Cantrell was not a theoretical threat. She was a present one. Same genre, same audience, same moment, and a relationship with Jay Z that Blu herself was unwilling to categorically deny in any interview anyone put in front of her.
Have you ever kissed Jay Z romantically?
No. No, I can't answer that.
The music started speaking first. In 2003, Beyonce released a collaboration with Sean Paul. The song referenced breathing. Blu Cantrell had released a collaboration with Sean Paul months earlier. Her song was titled Breathe. Blu went public with her read of the situation. She said Beyonce was copying her, that using Sean Paul was a direct dig because of Blu's association with him and with Jay Z, that the similarities were not coincidental. She said Beyonce was plagiarizing her, that she was ripping off her word, and she called it disappointing from someone who was already established and didn't need to do it. Then came the music video comparison.
Now, if you take a look at these videos side by side, you will have to agree that there are some nearly identical scenes found in both music videos. The concepts of both videos are also very similar, as well as the overall setting, all of which gave credence to Blu's claim.
Blu's video for Roundup and Beyonce, and Jay Z's video for '03 Bonnie and Clyde were placed side by fans and journalists who found the similarities difficult to dismiss. Similar concepts, similar settings, nearly identical scenes in certain sequences. Blu noted it publicly. She said if Beyonce had issues with her man, she should take it up with the man and not take it out on the girl. That line, address it with the guy, don't take it out on the girl, was not a vague statement. It was Blu explicitly acknowledging that there was something between her and Jay Z that Beyonce was aware of, was bothered by, and was responding to through her music rather than directly. She was saying the quiet part loud, and in doing so, she was making herself a problem that the Carter infrastructure was going to have to deal with.
I really like him though. And I don't care who he's dating. I always had a crush on him though.
The Wendy Williams interview was where everything crystallized. Wendy asked Blu directly whether she had ever kissed Jay Z romantically. Blu laughed, touched her neck, and said she couldn't answer that. She did not say no. She went on to say she still had a crush on Jay Z, that she always had, that she didn't care who he was dating, and, in response to a hypothetical about running into him in New York when everything was right, said she wouldn't turn it down. Watch that interview now. Watch Blu's body language against the weight of what she was being asked to deny. She knew exactly what answering honestly would cost her. She also was clearly unable to answer dishonestly. The result was the specific kind of non-answer that tells you everything while technically saying nothing. The nervous laugh, the deflection, the admission wrapped in a joke, the body doing the work that the words were too scared to do. Shortly after that interview, Blu Cantrell's career ended. Not slowly, not through a string of failed releases or shifting audience tastes. She went from releasing albums and earning Grammy nominations to radio silence in a period that felt almost immediate to people who were paying attention. Her contract with Arista was not renewed. No explanation was offered publicly. She did not move to another major label. She did not tour extensively. She did not resurface in any of the ways that artists with her profile typically resurface when a label relationship ends. She simply stopped existing in any space the industry controlled. Years later, she spoke to what happened at Arista. She said the checks were coming in, and she never saw a single one, that she was taken advantage of, that she did most of the writing, and they took all of her publishing. The most valuable and durable asset any songwriter owns, the thing that keeps generating income long after the initial release cycle ends. Without publishing rights, without royalties, without any financial infrastructure from the work she had created, she was left with a career whose commercial success had generated almost no lasting personal wealth. That is not bad luck. That is a specific kind of structural theft that requires someone in a position of power to facilitate. And the question of who had the institutional leverage at that moment in the industry, who sat at the intersection of label relationships, management deals, and the informal power structures that determine which artists get supported and which ones get quietly stripped and discarded, is not a difficult one to answer if you know who was operating at the top of that world in the mid-2000s. Our Wright has been direct about her read of what happened to Blu. She sent a message to Blu publicly, by name, telling her it was time to talk. That Jay Z worked very hard to erase her the same way he erased others. The same pattern she has described across multiple women whose careers intersected with the Carter orbit and then collapsed in ways that defied their talent and their commercial track record. She named it as a deliberate campaign, systematic erasure dressed up as natural industry attrition. And Blu, who has never fully told her story, who has maintained a silence that reads less like someone who has moved on and more like someone who understands what speaking costs, has not publicly contradicted that account. Then came 2014, and the incident in Santa Monica that the media covered for 48 hours and then buried under the narrative of another unstable former celebrity losing her grip on reality. Blu Cantrell was found by police at 2 a.m, running through the streets of Santa Monica, screaming that someone had given her poisonous gas. She was taken to a hospital and evaluated. TMZ ran the story. The framing was immediate and consistent. Fallen star, one-hit wonder, breakdown. By the time most people had processed the story, the image that had been established was of a mentally unstable woman who could not handle the decline of her career, not of someone who might have specific and rational reasons to fear for her safety. The poisoning claim was not treated as credible by any mainstream outlet. It was absorbed into the broader narrative of her instability and used to retroactively explain her career decline as the product of personal problems rather than external forces. And the people who had the most reason to want her discredited, the people whose names she had been publicly associating herself with in ways they had clearly found threatening enough to respond to, benefited from that framing without having to do anything to produce it. Jaguar Wright has talked about the playbook that gets run against women in this industry who become inconvenient to powerful people. The specific sequence: blacklist their career, isolate them from financial resources, wait for the pressure to produce a public moment of visible instability, then let the media do the work of making sure anything they say afterward gets filtered through the lens of that moment first. The credibility kill. Not a dramatic takedown, but a quiet burial under a single headline that makes journalists think twice before treating the person as a source worth protecting. Blu Cantrell's 2014 moment follows that sequence precisely. Whether the poisoning claim was real, whether it was the product of genuine trauma and fear, or whether it was the mental health consequence of years of industry abuse and financial devastation, the outcome was identical. She stopped being someone whose account of what happened to her career would be taken seriously by the mainstream. And the people whose behavior she might have described in that account have never had to answer for any of it. The Blue Ivy name is the detail that refuses to leave the conversation regardless of how many times the official explanation gets repeated. Jay Z has said the name came from calling the baby Blueberry during sonograms. That is a sweet story. It may even be true. But Blu Cantrell's name is not a color. It is a person. A specific woman who had a documented relationship with Jay Z, who was publicly and visibly erased from the industry during Beyonce's ascent, who went from platinum albums and Grammy nominations to running through the streets of Santa Monica claiming someone was trying to kill her, and who by 2012 had fewer than 10,000 Instagram followers and had not posted publicly in years. The idea that Jay Z and Beyoncé, two people who are meticulous about every detail of their public image and their daughter's public introduction to the world, selected a name with that specific resonance without awareness of what it referenced requires a level of naivety about how carefully these two people operate that simply does not hold up. Whether the name was chosen as acknowledgement, as a power move, as a coded message, or as something else entirely, it was chosen with full knowledge of who else carried it. And Blu Cantrell, when her fans flooded her account to ask how she felt about it, kept it diplomatic in a way that told you exactly how she actually felt. She said congratulations. She said she loved the name. And the barely concealed bitterness underneath those two sentences was visible to everyone who had been following her story. Where is Blu Cantrell now? That is the question her fans have been asking in comment sections for years. Her Instagram, which appears to still exist, has not been updated in years. The comments on it read like a missing persons thread. She disappeared. Is she okay? Someone check on her. An artist who was competing with Beyoncé for chart position in 2003 has essentially vanished from any public-facing platform, any industry conversation, any space where her name might naturally appear if her career had simply faded rather than been actively ended. The difference between fading and being erased is visible when you know what to look for. Artists fade with some trace, a comeback attempt, a small label release, a reality television appearance, an interview on a podcast that covers the nostalgia beat. The ones who get erased leave nothing. No trace, no updates, no interviews, no features, nothing that would require the industry infrastructure to provide them with access to a platform. And Blu Cantrell has left nothing of that kind for years. Jaguar Wright's message to her was not subtle. It was a public invitation to come forward, to tell the story, to let people know what actually happened. Jaguar said Jay Z worked very hard to erase Blu the same way he erased others. She put that on record, with Blu's name attached to it, in a public forum. And Blu has not responded to it, has not confirmed it, has not denied it, has maintained the same silence that has defined her public presence since the moment her career ended. The specific silence of someone who understands that the alternative is more expensive than anything the truth would give her back. That silence is the most frightening thing in this entire story. Not the conspiracy theories, not the music video comparisons, not even the 2014 breakdown. A woman who had platinum records and Grammy nominations and a voice that the internet is still rediscovering 20 years later. Completely silent. No story, no interviews, no documentation of where her life went after the industry decided she was done. Just absence. The kind that someone has to work very hard to maintain or that someone else has to work very hard to ensure. Compare that absence to what happened to artists who went through label disputes, public feuds, and industry blacklisting, but were not targeted by the specific infrastructure surrounding the Carters. Those artists resurface. They find independent roots. They release music on their own terms. They do interview circuits. They write memoirs. They build YouTube channels or podcast presences that let them control their own narrative. The music industry's power to silence people has real limits, unless the person being silenced has been so thoroughly stripped of resources, credibility, and industry relationships that none of those alternative routes are available to them. Blu Cantrell was stripped of her publishing. She never received her royalties. She left Arista in 2004 with no financial foundation from the work that had made other people significant money. She attempted a comeback in 2013, calling herself a free agent and announcing new music. Nothing materialized. And then came the 2014 Santa Monica incident and the media's immediate reflexive framing of her as unstable, which closed the door on the comeback before it could open. That sequence, financial stripping, then isolation, then a public credibility event that makes any future account she gives filterable through mental health framing, is not an accident. It is a methodology. Jaguar Wright has described it specifically in the context of multiple women she says went through versions of the same process. And Blu Cantrell's timeline follows it with the kind of precision that makes the word coincidence feel increasingly inadequate. The Beyoncé angle is the one that the mainstream has always been most reluctant to engage with directly. Because Beyoncé's public image as a self-made icon, as a champion of women, as someone whose entire artistic persona is built around themes of feminine power and solidarity, makes her direct involvement in the destruction of another woman's career and livelihood deeply uncomfortable to contemplate. It disrupts the narrative in ways that feel personal for a lot of fans who have built genuine emotional investment in what Beyoncé represents. But the music video comparisons are documented. The Sean Paul collaboration timing is documented. Beyoncé's own lyrics, the Sagittarius reference in Signs, the Pisces reference pointed directly at Blu's sign, are documented. These are not fan inventions. They are things Beyoncé put into the public record herself. Things that Blu Cantrell responded to publicly, things that establish a real and documented antagonism between two women that went well beyond normal industry competition. And Jay Z's role in it, as the man whose relationship with Blu created the original tension, as the man with the institutional power to determine which careers got resources and which ones got quietly ended, as the man who by the mid-2000s was operating at a level of industry authority that let him shape outcomes in ways that left no fingerprints, is the thread that ties everything together. He was the president of Def Jam Records. He was running Rock Nation. He was one of the most connected people in the entire entertainment ecosystem. And the woman who had been unwilling to deny their relationship on television, who had publicly accused his partner of copying her music and using Sean Paul as a weapon against her, who had essentially dared Beyoncé to address it with Jay Z rather than through music, that woman needed to be removed from the equation. The removal happened. The methodology left no official trace. And 20 years later, Blu Cantrell is a ghost in her own Instagram comments, while the people whose names she refused to stop being associated with remain at the apex of cultural power. The TikTok resurgence of hit 'em up style is the detail that feels most poetic about all of this. A song recorded in 2001 by a woman the industry spent 20 years erasing going viral in 2023 with 12 million views because the music was good enough to survive everything that was done to prevent it from being remembered. Younger audiences who had never heard of Blu Cantrell discovered the song, loved it, searched for more, and found the story, found the questions, found the absence that should not exist for someone with her talent and her track record. That is the thing about erasure done to artists rather than to the art itself. The art has its own life. It does not cooperate with the people trying to make it disappear. And every time someone new discovers hit 'em up style and asks who this woman is and where she went, the answer to the second question pulls the whole story back to the surface. Blu Cantrell is somewhere. She is alive, at least as of her last verifiable public presence. Whether she is okay, whether she is safe, whether she is living a life that reflects in any way what her talent and her work deserved, those questions do not have answers that the public currently has access to, and the people who would know are not talking. That is the situation as it stands. A woman erased, a story buried, an industry that has moved on, and a growing number of people who have decided, with the specific energy that the post-Diddy cultural moment has generated, that moving on is no longer acceptable. So here is what we are sitting with. Blu Cantrell had a documented relationship with Jay Z that Beyoncé was demonstrably bothered by. She was publicly unwilling to deny it on camera. Her career ended in the period immediately following her most visible statements about that relationship. She lost her publishing rights and never saw her royalties. She ended up running through the streets of Santa Monica at 2 a.m, claiming she was being poisoned. She disappeared from public life so completely that her own fans are asking in Instagram comments whether she is still alive. And Jay Z and Beyoncé named their daughter Blu. None of that is coincidence, and none of it has ever been explained. Do you think Blu Cantrell's silence is the silence of someone who has simply moved on? Or the silence of someone who knows exactly what speaking would cost her? And does the Blue Ivy name read to you as innocent when you lay it against the full context of what happened to the woman who carried that name first? Drop everything you're thinking in the comments. This story has been buried long enough, and it deserves every voice willing to dig it back up. If this is the kind of breakdown that keeps you here, hit that like and subscribe, because Blu Cantrell's story is far from the only one that looks like this. And we are going to keep pulling these threads until the full picture is visible.